Hey there.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I'm excited to be here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, James. Hey, Jessica, I want that recipe.
When we graduate.
Oh, gosh. Uh, I want that recipe.
There's Carl. So, Carl and Jessica, remember we've got the Kate visit coming up this week, and they said to make sure that we reminded you and don't be late. They said you couldn't come in late, and they won't let you leave early. Um, but I think other than that, I want to look at that schedule here in just a minute when we get everybody in while we're getting started tonight. Is everybody's blackboard up working again? It crashed today, and I just got mine to come back up. Um,
Yeah, mine's working.
all right. It wouldn't work this afternoon when I had a final defense, so I couldn't upload his. I'll do that tonight. So let me share my screen. We'll get started. All right. So for this evening, today is March 19th. We have Keith. Um, we have Andalicia and Jessica who
Yep.
are presenting Essex and Fowler chapters. All right, we'll get to that in a minute again. I just got my blackboard up. Let me go here. All right. Okay. Hello. Good. All right. Let me can I send you I'll email you a link and see if it'll work that way. All right. Thank you. All right. I thought that was Keith. All right, that's where I was. New email.
It's in my eye.
Well, I spoke too soon. My email's frozen. That's never good. Let me stop my share. See if I can get it to work. Nope. Let me start again. There we go.
It's in my eye.
All right. Let me go here. Let me copy this link for him and send it to him to see if he can get in that way. Control V. Send. All right. Okay. We'll go back here. All right. For those of you who don't know, this is Cape Week, and what that means is coming up accreditation, just like y'all go through SACS or Vance Ed or Cognia or whatever. And so I wanted current students in our class to represent us, and they wanted them to be from the Foothills Initiative. So if they ask you, the Foothills Initiative is Rutherford, Cleveland, Lincoln, and Gaston. All right, that's the Foothills Initiative. You're supposed to do special things or in your area. As you know, universities have that service charge, and so just so happened that we had two from Lincoln County in this group, so that's why them. I could they'll do a great job. I'm not waffling here, but I always get asked why you pick who you pick. Well, there was a criteria, and so I picked Jessica and Carl because they're from Lincoln. Um, we've done the Gaston Initiative and several others. So let me share my screen. Okay, so let me find y'all's names. All right, it should be right along. Yep, there y'all are. Carl and Jessica will be on Wednesday, March 25th from 3 to 4. Um, I'm going to, and they have to be somebody who's currently enrolled in classes. Um, and they're going to talk to you about, I don't know if they'll talk very much about classes or maybe they'll talk about clinical experiences. And what that means is how you're putting your evidence work together, out in classes when you're doing like this semester, this group's doing policy analysis. How does that work in your school where you are and how are you putting what you're learning in class in your schools? And so that's what they will be there for. And so I'm gonna send that to Carl. Jessica, JK, Jessica Kelly. All right. There is your link in your time. Again, the time, looking back at that, is Wednesday, March 25th at 3 p.m. All right. So that should take care of that housekeeping issue. All right. Before we start class tonight, if you were speaking to the accreditors, what would you say about what you're learning? James, what would you say if somebody said, "How are you taking what you're learning? How is that informing your practice as a school principal?"
I would say the learning is practical. Um, that's kind of the reason, that's what motivated me to go back to school in my first year of a principalship. But like, for example, especially this class, talking about IEPs and, just the practicality that you're making to make sure that we're actually taking things that will stick in the education arena currently.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, I have a follow-up question. I got a text message today, this morning, and said, "Is there an issue with a parent, two parents met with school administration and a teacher, two sets of parents, I think is the understanding that I had, and said the teacher secretly recorded the meeting where they were talking about the student. Is that an issue?"
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Yes. All right. While North Carolina is a one-party consent recording state, that's you have no expectation of privacy in a public place, but in a home or an office, there's an expectation of privacy. All right, back to James's question, James's answer. What federal law would that violate that protects student records and confidentially, not just their written records?
Papa,
Purple.
FERPA.
I got
There
to
you
present on that
go.
next week.
All right. Now, there's a Lincoln County case. I don't know if it's been settled or not. Two teachers were talking in the hallway about an EC kid. Is that a violation?
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely. I don't know how much Lincoln County is going to have. I don't know why Lincoln County didn't settle the lawsuit. The person that was in charge of that there at that time told them that they needed to settle the lawsuit. They refused. Um, that falls under that. If you can't listen, you can feel clause. Because I'm going to tell you, the court's going to take all their hide off. Um, you know. So then I got asked another question this week. I mean, these are questions. These are things that come to me every day. I'm on my phone with somebody every day. So the next question I got this week was, is there an issue that when a kid's 504 was being developed, they went ahead and did the behavior goals at the same time. That would be the same as writing the behavior intervention plan the same time you did the IEP. Is that appropriate? Is that legal? Can you do the IEP and the BIP, the behavior intervention plan, at the same time in the same meeting?
I would think that there's a lot of information in the IEP meeting that is relative to the behavior plan, in terms of understanding exactly what needs to be set up for the 504. But I don't think that it should happen at the same time.
You're right. It should not happen at the same time. Now, we're talking about roughly equivalent here. 504 plan creates what? A personalized education plan rather than IEP. And there's also behavior interventions that can be done in addition to that plan. Same as the EC process ends up with an IEP, an individualized education plan, and then you can do a separate behavior intervention plan, especially if you have to do a manifestation termination on a student. Now, the law is very clear. You can't do them both at the same time. Why? Why can't you do them both at the same time and save everybody some time and trouble, wear and tear, getting together, coordinating meetings?
Isn't that a different pocket of money for
Well,
one?
no, it's not. It's not the money. It's the process.
Okay.
It would save money if you did it that way, and that's
Yeah.
why people do it. It does save money if you do it that way. However, it's a violation of the law.
Because
Why? Why is it a violation of the law, James?
is the BIP a part of the process of the IEP as
No, it's a separate one.
okay.
It's added to the IEP.
Right, because it's part of the data, right? They're part of the interventions that you have to try out to make sure that they work or not, right?
But the IEP is supposed to be what? Educational, isn't it?
Right.
And if the kid is doing behaviors, we go back and visit that separately. Because if we consider behaviors in the IEP, what might that affect? The least restrictive environment, LRE.
Okay. Hmm.
You know, one of the things that we have to be careful of is when we're doing IEPs, that's about education, not behavior. 504 plan is about education, not behavior. We can add an addendum plan to it, and we do many times if the kid is manifesting bad behavior. But we can't take that behavior into account where their most appropriate educational placement should be. Think about this for a second. We can't let that part of it determine their educational placement or be a factor in it. Now, we put a kid in this educational placement and he's not being successful. We write a plan and then we start working on those behaviors. But in that same setting, and if they're, and James said, if they're not, if they're, we try them, if they're not working, then we might look at a change in placement, updating the IEP. But we can't take that behavior into account to start with. If we do, we will almost always end up in a more restrictive environment. And we are not supposed to write an IEP based on behavior goals. That's why it's a separate plan. It's supposed to be based on educational goals. But what do school districts do to save time and money? They just run them all together until you get caught doing that. And then parents go and sue you based on my child is in a more restrictive environment, but because of their behavior, not because of their disability. Uh-oh. That would be capricious. You give them more punishment than they deserve. Uh-oh. These are real life scenarios of things that you're supposed to, that you're going to be asked to know. Got one this week, field trip policy. Filled out the forms, went on the field trip. Everything looked good. They collected money from the kids to buy their lunch on the way. Is that okay?
No, that's not okay, because on the field trip form, and only because I got one going next week, there's a section on it that specifically says to the parents that they are asking the parents to contribute if it is indeed going to be a cost factor involved with making sure they get fed. And the parents sign off and they agree.
Yep.
But if the parents didn't give authorization, you can't take money from children.
No, you can't.
You can't.
And and you got to, if you were taking it from the parents, you'd have to receipt it.
Yeah.
All right. They didn't tell anybody, but they stopped at Chick-fil-A. Is that okay?
Nope.
No, absolutely not. And the response was, well, we filled out the field trip form, but you didn't say anything about, if you could explain to me the educational impact of stopping at Chick-fil-A. So that one came up this week. There's two problems. One is the fiscal accountability of collecting money from kids, not receipting it, not having any way to do account verification, deposit, do any of that. They just took the money and handed it to the people. We don't know where the money went, what happened. There's no way to receipt it. There's no way to do reconciliation between tickets sold and any of that. That's just like at a ball game. You have to have an account reconciliation. If you just collected money from kids and that's the financial piece is the first error. Second piece is you would have had to got it approved to stop it at Chick-fil-A. Now, I'll call on Jessica. If you were the decision maker and kids were going on an educational field trip, would you approve for them to stop at Chick-fil-A?
No,
Why not?
because
Everybody loves that chicken.
I don't. Because it doesn't tie into the standards or the educational aspect of the field trip.
Yeah, that's it. But also there's another reason, and this is one nobody ever thinks about. Jessica, I asked her specifically because she could probably do it. She could probably do it. It doesn't tie in with the education. I wouldn't approve it, but she could probably do it from this standpoint. But James could not.
Child nutrition.
There you go. Oh, I love working with smart people. Yay! If
Yeah.
you have a federally funded child nutrition program, which all traditional public schools have, you can't do competition with that program. You'll lose your benefits or your commodities. Sometimes they give you commodities and not money. Boy, I gained 20 pounds the first month I was at the middle school that had welfare cheese back in the 80s. Boy, I'm telling you what. Oh, they made macaroni and cheese every day with that welfare cheese. Man, I ate that stuff by the truckload. Love that stuff. That was the commodity that we got in that county. I love that stuff. Those big blocks of cheese, man, that stuff is good. But yes, you can't be in competition with the federal child nutrition program. Now, some charter schools have lunch, but most of them have some kind of a private contract. They don't participate in the federally funded child nutrition program. But if you do, you absolutely cannot be stopping at Hardee's or McDonald's or Chick-fil-A on the way.
So I'm clarifying myself in case I ever move up to the secondary world. So
Yeah,
in the elementary world, we're packing lunches or they bring their own lunch.
that's
But
exactly right.
But when I worked at the alternative school, we definitely stopped at McDonald's.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't happen.
If they had federal lunch at that school, you should not have been stopping. That is true.
Wow. Interesting.
And they're getting pickier and pickier on that stuff because the federal government's trying to get out of funding education. And a big part of that is exceptional children and the child nutrition program. Those are the two biggest funding issues for federal money. Those two right there, exceptional children and child nutrition.
That's interesting to know because we're going on a field trip. I'm at secondary next Wednesday we're taking some of our juniors and seniors to the Raleigh Convention Center to the HBCU College Fair. And the superintendent is giving us the P card to stop at Chick-fil-A to get the kids food.
It's very nice. That's very nice. An arrangement with child nutrition. He's using school district money to pay for that, and he's working around that rather than people paying out of their pocket. That
Yeah.
way, child nutrition's not losing anything.
Okay, that makes
There
sense.
you go. The important part of what Lisa just said is the superintendent is giving the P card to do
Mhm.
that, so that it won't be in competition with child nutrition. That's not money that they would have gotten. But now, if parents send money or kids take money out of their pocket, that was money that child nutrition was supposed to get. You're in direct competition. That's exactly right. That's a good point, Lisa. That he's doing it. That would be now if you could do something like that, but
Dr.
you definitely should not be just, outlawing your own way to the fast food restaurants because again, you're in competition with child nutrition. That's exactly right.
Lamb, so are you saying during the day, or are you saying even after school activities? Because after school
We're talking
activities,
about field trips. Field trips, by definition, are during the educational day. That's a good point, James. I should have reminded everybody what a field trip is. It's just like what's the difference between a duty roster and a supervision schedule? Duty rosters during the day when you're on the clock that you're being paid. Supervision schedule is after hours, and that's those additional duties assigned by the principal that's in the teacher's contract. We have to be very careful to designate between the two of those. James is exactly right. A field trip is during the day. You're extending the learning from the classroom into the field. By definition, it's during the school day. Now, educational trips might be at night, weekends, DECA going to Atlanta and getting drunk as they always do. You know that crowd that always when they go to Atlanta, there's drinking and partying going on. But yes, the difference between the two. We're talking about if you just leaving school for, an hour, two, three, whatever during the day, a field trip where you're extending the education from the classroom to the field. You're not supposed to compete with child nutrition. They're supposed to send you a bag lunch. That's how that works. That's how that works.
Like our field trip that I'm taking a group next week, just in the county, it's a county trip, local trip.
Yeah.
We planned it, and we have to be back for the fourth lunch so the kids can eat lunch at school. So
There you go.
we have to do like a tour and make sure the buses and everything are back in time to run their routes for,
Yeah.
and the kids can eat before the end of the day.
All right. After 9/11, which happened in 2001, I was in the central office by then. But up until a year before that, I had been principal there at a school in the southwestern part of the county. Now, I could have thrown a flat rock on a windy day into South Carolina. Could I take a field trip across the line? It was closer to go across the line, Buster Boyd Bridge over to Camp Thunderbird. And the science place over there was a lot closer than driving back to the city of Charlotte. Could I do that? Most districts after 9/11 put a field trip policy in that you could not leave the state, no matter how close by it was. And so you got to be concerned about child nutrition. You got to be concerned about leaving the county, the district, or leaving the state. All of those things, you need to be cognizant of what the policies are on those in your district. Now, here's one of the things that aggravates me the most. If you call somebody at the central office, what was it Snoop said? If you don't know, you better ask somebody. You call somebody and they can't find it, they don't know until there's a wreck. And then, boy, they got it immediately. They come trotting it out then. You weren't supposed to cross the state line. You weren't supposed to cross the county line. Well, now I called you and asked you for this. Why come you couldn't find it before? Well, because it didn't matter before. Now that there's been a wreck, a bus wreck, now it matters. That's what you will find a lot of times. That's where you need to have, at the building level, you need to have a good relationship with your director. remember, what is the director role? The director role in the central office is the liaison between the central office and the school. We've talked about that before. That's what that position is. Told you, I had a couple of summers ago, I went in and did a workshop. Uh, it would be presumptuous on my part to call it professional development, but I did a workshop for the directors in one small city district in North Carolina, the whole group, because they weren't communicating with the schools. Why did we hire directors? To communicate with the schools. That's their only job. When you go to the central office, you think, boy, I'm glad to be done with schools. Finally made, no, not as director. And that's the first level. That is your job, is to be in the schools and be the liaison from the school to the central office. That's by definition what a director is. Most important thing for you as a principal is to find out who your director is and make sure that you have some kind of a relationship. So when all these kinds of things pop up and you say, I need to know about this code, this law, this policy, that they're the person that they don't wait till a wreck happens and then all of a sudden they can find it. That's the thing. And then on the other shoe, your first job when you leave the school is going to be a directorship. You got to understand your job is to help them and communicate with them. And it can't just be, well, I only provide help in times of emergency. Um, it wasn't important enough for me. When I say that, by extension, what people feel like they're not important. I've told you about the central office person when I was in a far western district and I was at the end of the county. I mean, I was literally the school was up against the mountain. I mean, from there was no other place to go in that county. There were no side roads. I mean, this was the road leaving the county, going up the mountain to be up at the ski area. I mean, you were as far as you could go. You didn't pass it going anywhere else in the district. And every time he would come, he was my person. Every time he would come, I can't stay but a minute. He didn't come but twice a year. I can't stay but a minute. I'm on my way somewhere else. And I finally said to him after 2 or 3 years of this, there isn't, I would like for just one time for me to be the place that you're going. That had to tell somebody else you couldn't stay but a minute because you were coming to see me. There is nobody else up this way. There is no, you're not passing me going to anybody else. That's impossible. I'm the last school in this part of the world. The next school is in the next county over. That's what we're talking about here. So these are things that have popped up this week. We'll do stars of the week when we get together next, and so let's talk about that. I don't know if there's Keith. Keith got on. Everybody's good. All right, so let's look at our schedule right quick. Let me share my screen. All right, I can close that. All right, so today is March 19th. We will meet again next Thursday, and I will do Stars of the Week then. And then the next time we're together is 2 weeks after, that's 2 weeks after that on April the 9th. Is that correct? I guess it is. And then April 16th, and then our last class weekend we got one Zoom after that. Our last class weekend. If I can get this to download. Yeah. So we're here the 19th. We'll meet again on Zoom on the 26th, and next week, no class. We'll be at Zoom. And then our last weekend together is the last weekend in this month. the 25th, or excuse me, in April. 25th and 26th is our last, and then our last class is on the 7th and 8th. Now, if you have a residency weekend makeup, well, you know you can't come to that one. You can come the weekend before. But make sure you get in touch with me before you do that. I might have some other alternative now. I don't think I'm going to be able to do any makeups beyond April. I'm not sure what's going to happen in May. You know, the building has been sold. I don't know when we've not been told yet when we're going to vacate, but it's strange that the summer schedule has not been put out yet. So that tells me that they might be vacating that building as soon as spring is over, or we might get to stay there this summer. Or the issue, I don't think they want to, we'll need to stay the whole summer until August. I don't think they want to move us in the middle of the term. So I think there's still discussion going on as to what's going to happen with that move. So if you can't come the weekend before, I might can work out something, but we definitely can't come the weekend after, is what my understanding is right now. Not sure if we're going to move out for summer or not yet, but we're not booking anything that's not on the schedule right now beyond the end of the month of April. The thought is that we'd be at the Harper campus about 1.33 miles away, just right on out Airwood, just another 1.33 miles out the Hebron Road. That's the idea if we're moving out of this one until there's a more permanent location secured. But we'll have a place no matter what. We'll do that. But let me know if you need to do a residency makeup. Just email me and we'll figure something out. All right. All right, Lisa, you've got the first 2 chapters tonight. You ready? I'll turn off my camera and let you see if you can share. I took my necktie off. You see, I was wearing a white shirt today. I've got another doctor today. Carter Barron, successful final defense today. Yay.
So I had chapter 5. Is that correct? I think, yeah. Hold on. All right, Dr. Lamb, you might get me because I only thought I had to do chapter 5, and you just
That's
said
fine. Whatever you got.
okay. So I had chapter 5 of the Essex chapter, and so that talked about individuals with disabilities. So that was just crazy how Dr. Lamb was just talking about like individuals with disabilities. That was chapter 5. And so some of the key topics from that chapter was talked about the IDEIA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Educational Improvement Act. It talked about the National Council on Disability, education-related service requirement, isolation and restraint laws, discipline students with disabilities, and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1997. So in 1975, Congress enacted the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And a part of that act, they realized that 8 million children had needs that had not been met. And of the 8 million, 4 million had not been provided appropriate education, which was a serious issue, a big issue. Aiden, I'm in class. Sorry. And so with that, I also learned from this chapter that there were 2 cases, the Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children versus the Commonwealth and Mills versus Board of Education Act. With the Pennsylvania case, the district court ruled that children with mental retardation are entitled to a free and public education. And then with the Mills case, the exclusion of children with disabilities from the District of Columbia was put in place. Can y'all see my slide?
I
No.
was getting ready to ask you. No, we can't.
Sorry. I'm just talking and y'all can't even see my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. All right. Window, tab. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. Now, can y'all see it?
Nope. It's coming. Almost there. Yay. We got it.
Okay. So the overview of IDEIA is, again, it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. It was originally IDEA in 1990, but in 2004, they changed it to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. It ensures that there is a free, appropriate public education for all students, and it protects the rights of students with disabilities. And then it also focuses on the procedural safeguards, which is the rights to due process for the parents. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when I further on in the slide. So the key principles of the IDEIA is it talked about the free, appropriate public education, where students with disabilities should be granted the opportunities to free and appropriate education. It also talked about the least restricted environment, where students with disabilities should not be excluded from the general population. They should have the opportunity to be included in the general population classroom with those students as well. And then it talks about the individualized education program, which is where they talked about the IEP plan. It also talked about the National Council on Disability. This is an independent federal agency. It advises the president and the Congress. It focuses on disability policy, policy and rights, and it advocates for equal access and inclusion. This organization also plays a major role in shaping national disability policies and ensuring accountability. Also, hold on. I took some notes because this was a lot to remember. This council also conveys stakeholders to acquire timely and relevant input for recommendations and action steps. They gather information and analyze data on information about different disabilities. It engage and influence current debates and agendas. They identify and formulate solutions to emerging long-standing challenges, and they provide tools to facilitate effective implementation as it relates to children with disabilities. Some education-related service requirements are schools must provide necessary support services to students with disabilities, such as whether it's speech therapy. They must provide students with transportation if needed. Counseling and services must support access to free and appropriate education. So identification for students with disabilities. So evaluation and assessments are required for students who are identified and referred with as students with disabilities. You must not discriminate on, for example, so if they have a language barrier. So if you have a ESL student, you can't say, well, this student needs a IEP because they're an ESL student. They will only need the IEP if it is required. Like that student that definitely needs services. So you just can't say, well, he has a language barrier, we need to give him an IEP. That is not what you should do. It includes response to interventions and multi-tiered systems of support, which is MTSS. Isolation and restraint law. It talked about isolation and restraint laws, which are used only in emergencies, must protect student safety. Policies vary by state, and documentation is required. Discipline students with disabilities. You must follow the IDEIA procedures. Consider if the behavior is disability related, and then you cannot deny a free and appropriate education. Also, under the discipline students with disabilities, it talked about the MDR, which is manifestation determination review. It determines if behavior is linked to the disability. If yes, you cannot apply typical discipline. You must revise the IEP or behavior plan as needed. And if no, standard discipline may apply. And so with this, I have sat in a lot of MDR meetings because I have actually suspended students who has an IEP and they were suspended up to 10 days. So if they were suspended up to 10 days, we would have to have a MDR, a manifestation determination meeting with the parent. The parent can appeal that. We have had parents who have appealed a MDR. And so what we would have to do, we basically would go back and have to look at the IEP or the behavior plan and revise that plan as needed. So every time a student with an IEP or a behavior plan, they are suspended 10 days or more, we have to have a manifestation determination meeting. The IDEA 1997 amendment strengthened discipline procedures, and what was required under that was a behavior intervention plan, which is also called a BIP, a functional behavior assessment, and an FBA, which is linked to behavior and the instruction. We do have students at the secondary school that I'm at that have behavior plans. I have a student that's in my alphabet who actually has a break card. So in his plan, he has to take 10-minute breaks. He has accommodations. He doesn't have an IEP. He just have a plan that we have to follow, and all the teachers have access to that plan. Section 504 and ADA connection. The Section 504 is the Rehabilitation Act that was in 1973. The ADA, Americans with Disability Act, which is broader protections than IDEIA and then covers more students. So key takeaways from that was the DEIA, which is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Act, which ensures access and equity. Schools must follow strict legal procedures. Inclusion and individualized support is essential, and discipline must be consider the disability. And it also talked about, I thought I had a slide in here about the due process, but I may not have put that in there. Maybe it's somewhere in my notes. I thought I had put it in the slide. So parents are granted the due process, which could be substantial due process. So they have the right to give their voice on the situation. And that was my chapter 5. I didn't realize I had another chapter.
No, that's okay. You can do it at a later time. I'll find you some time.
Okay.
Later on, that's fine. All right, I'm trying to find it right quick. Immaterial. We saw it last time. I was just going to remember the slideshow that I added in on exceptional children. I want to hit a couple. You can stop your share now, Alicia. Thank you. I want to hit on a couple things that I hit on before. I guess I'm old school. I think if you hear it enough, at some point you'll internalize it. The MDR, manifestation termination, whether a child's behavior is a function of their disability. That's another reason why we split behavior and academics, because we're going to look at that later on. But the biggest mistake I see made, two things: butt and seat rule. Got that one yesterday or day before. I got a question about that. What if they just have them sit in the office the rest of the day and don't fill out any paperwork and say that they were suspended? Is that a change in placement to sit in the office all day? Mm-hmm. That's ISS, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Duh. Again, butt and seat rule. That covers things like that, where we don't say that the kid's suspended, or we don't call it ISS or OSS, but he's not in his regular placement. That would be a change in placement. All right. And then I don't know if anybody still does the bouncing in PBIS, where you move them to another teacher in the same grade level on the team, maybe, or something like that. That's change in placement too.
They still do that.
Yeah, that's a change in placement. And again, that counts on the 10. Anytime his butt's not in his regular seat, that's one of the 10. You got to understand that. I know that people will just try to argue. I know the law, and I know what happens when you go to court. Unfortunately, I know both ends of that one. So I'm just telling you, when you go to court, they're not going to let you play the semantics game. Well, he wasn't suspended. Well, was he in the room in his regular placement? No, he was up at the office, but he wasn't suspended. Well, that's in school suspension. That will count. All right, that's the next one, and then the follow up on that one is, as again, I'm beating the same drum here. If the kid shows a pattern, you don't get 10 days. Third time kid gets in the fight, EC kid gets in the fight, he goes to MDR right then.
Mm-hmm.
If they show a pattern. Now, if they do, he gets in the fight, he steals somebody's cell phone, and he cusses a teacher. That's 3 different things. But if he does the same thing 3 times, ding, 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 he goes straight to MDR. That's the way it goes. And I'll have people, we'll go in and we'll change it so it'll say, one will say aggressive behavior and one will say, don't do that. Again, don't sacrifice your career over something that dumb. Just go ahead and do the MDR. Now, placement of kids. The 90 before the 90. We went over this before. This is where folks get fouled up as well, and it ends up in court. The 90 before the 90. When a kid gets a referral and you start the first 90-day process, that first 90 days is the 90 before the 90. Let me be clear on that. You don't skip the kid to the front of the line, you start the second 90. Now in North Carolina, we're required, every school district is supposed to be fully implemented on MTSS, right? Everybody say, yeah, we know that, Dale. All right. That's the first 90. So if a kid gets referred, he's still got to go to the first 90 before he goes to the second 90, which is the EC 90. The first 90 is the MTSS. I have people all the time say, well, we got a referral on that kid. We're going to skip him past the MTSS. No, you're not. You got to do the 90 before the 90. So you don't get to skip. Well, we'll get the parent to request it. Still doesn't matter. You got to do the 90 before the 90. Now, what does the 90 consist of? It's 330s, isn't it? This is the next thing that I have see people get this wrong and get sued all the time. The 90 is actually 330s. What's the first 30? What's the first 30 days? I'm still with you. In either of the 90-day processes, what's the first 30? Anecdotals. What is that? Data collection. Anecdotal evidence documenting the student's behaviors or academic difficulty. That's the first 90. What's the second 90? First level of intervention. What's the third 90? Either a continuation of the first level or the second level of intervention. 30 days of anecdotals, level one extension, or level two. What do I see people do, especially on the second 90? As soon as the second 90 starts, what do they try to do? They try to go to intervention immediately without any anecdotal evidence. They go to intervention immediately. Sometimes because parents are demanding something, but what by law do you have to do first? You have to collect data and evidence first. These interventions are supposed to be evidence-based. Remember that term. Evidence-based. So understand there's two 90s now, but each of the 90s follows the same pattern, same process. You can't deviate. Make sure that you understand that you don't get to skip to the front of the line and get to the second 90 until you've gone through the first 90. That's state law now. Everybody needs to understand that.
When did that change?
2 years ago.
I've never heard it. Good to know, though.
MTSS is required in all schools now. It's supposed to be fully implemented. It got delayed. The implementation got delayed because of COVID. But immediately coming out of COVID, they said that it had to be done. It was supposed to have been done 2 years ago. Some districts maybe not quite there yet.
Yeah. So currently, and it's probably just me needing to change my systems, we have the meeting if the parent requests, and
Yeah.
we'll deny to continue because we need more data.
Yeah. 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 Because the very people that pushed you will be the ones that sue you. You got to remember that.
So, and I was typing notes. So the first 90 is the anecdotal documenting of the student's behavior, the first 30 days. The second 90 is the first level of intervention with the anecdotal evidence, right? And then
Yeah.
the third 90, which is the 30 days, is the third level of intervention where the decision is made or the action is taken, or no?
Yeah. See, here's the core. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. But it's data-driven problem. Teams analyze to inform instructional decisions. See right here? It's what we're talking about. Has to be data-driven. Has to be data-informed. That's your first 30. Can't skip that one. And then here are the tiers core. Again, that's your core instruction. Then you do your data-driven problem, and then you get the first level of intervention, and then you might get more intensive. It might be the same or it might be something different according to how the first level of intervention is working.
What was that link you were looking at?
I just did
Oh,
MTSS
MTT.
in public
Okay.
schools.
Okay.
Right here. This is it. 2023 is when it became when this took over 2 years ago. Everybody's required to have it. Everybody's required to do the 90 before the 90. Right here, right there it is. Everybody, every day. This is straight from DPI, folks. This is not Dale's opinion. Right there it is. And right here's all of the pieces of it if you want to learn more about it. But right there, every pre-K-12 public education system implements and sustains all components of MTSS. That is state law. It is not optional. It is not something that you can decide to do or not to do if you're in one of the 14. Now, the question becomes for Jessica and Carl, what about charter schools? Jessica, I'll let you speak to that.
We have a fully implemented MTSS process. I do not know if it's the law applies to charter schools,
It
but we have
does.
one. So,
It does.
yeah.
Yep. But again, this is just my personal experience with Lincoln Charter School. They would do it even if it wasn't required, because they're one of the good ones. Not just because Jessica and Carl are here, but I told you I just live right across the lake from them. I know all the people there or taught them, know them. I know the community. I'm part of that community. This community would demand that. And so they're doing the right thing, whether they're legislated to or not. And that's what's important for all of us to remember. It's the right thing to do, whether it's legislated or not. We as leaders doing policy and law can't just say we're only going to follow the law because we have to. Um, and we got to convince our teachers that it's the right thing to do, regardless of the law. Because some of them don't care that it's the law. They don't want to. They're like, how many of you have ever worked in middle school? And there's two things that just wear you out in middle school.
Kids.
The two things that wear you out in middle school kids are enamored with the concept of fair. Everything has to be fair. It's not fair. You hear that all day, every day in middle school. That's one concept in middle school, the early adolescence. The other concept is I don't want to. I mean, why can't you do this? I don't want to. You got to get past that where it doesn't, because some teachers still operate at that level. This is the law, this is the policy, this is what we do. Well, I don't want to. You have to build a culture in your buildings where we're doing it not because it's the law or policy, but because it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's the difference between compliance and commitment. Law and policy are just or the negative part or the fear part of retribution or punishment, but that won't ever build commitment. That only builds compliance. You've got to build a culture in your school where we're going to do the right thing for these kids because it's the right thing to do. That's what you're looking to do. And then everybody won't see this as extra work. This is our work. Because then they fall back on this is extra work. It's not fair. Again, sound like a bunch of 11-year-olds. Your teachers and you need to know law and policy, but you also have to have some professionalism about you that will do the right things because it's the right thing to do. The right thing is always the right thing to do. And the hardest place to get that compliance is in MTSSEC. That's the hardest thing that you have to do as a school administrator is to get teachers to understand that we've got to do this. This is not extra. This is what we do. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Anybody have any other questions? Alicia, thank you for your presentation tonight.
I'm gonna just be honest. Dr. Lamb, I honestly forgot about my presentation. I was not prepared. Forgot about chapter 6 completely, but I will do chapter 6
All
and I
right.
will submit my
We'll
presentation.
get you later then. That's
Thank you.
what we need. All
But
right.
work has been crazy. I'm sorry. And then Dr. Porter's quantitative class.
Yeah, I know.
It's a lot.
Kind of heavy this semester. You got
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Jessica.
All right, can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, moving on to policy. I had the chapters in Fowler. So the first stage, the first two stages of the policy process really talks about perception versus reality. And obviously, we all see this as educators every day, no matter what role you work in, whether you're with students or parents or other staff, that um, humans really perceive the reality that we think we should perceive. So that tied into that if policy issue isn't well defined, it isn't perceived as not important. So the first two stages really occur behind the scenes, and the biggest point this chapter made was that leaders, school leaders that aren't familiar with these two stages can feel very blindsided. And because they happen so silently, they're easy to not pay attention to. So, issue definition is a political process. Sorry, I'm trying to get my you all off the screen so I can see. Okay. Um, Political processes that involves transforming a problem into an issue that the government can address is their definition of issue definition. It occurs through written and spoken communication. It really sets the stage, and problems versus policy issues. So issues that are controversial are are an interpretation of a problem is what is considered a problem. The education policy planning and research community, EPRC, which I had to look that up because it wasn't a term I was familiar with, is the influencers of that, and that includes the U.S. Department of Education, policy planning groups, which are think tanks, and then I put a couple page references here because there is some good figures in the text, but page 110 in the text has figures of educational policy organizations. So it is worth looking into to familiarize yourself with that. And then, of course, just like everything, follow the money, and you can look at funding, which is made from corporations, wealthy individuals, and the government. So, new ideas. Think tanks and research oriented universities are sites of the most intellectual activity. So, as we all know, knowledge equals power. There are three types of research: basic and applied and integrative. So, basic is the learning theory, is an example of that. It's in a controlled environment. Applied test theory in real life settings, so in schools or classrooms. So, like an evaluation research, trying to determine how well a new program is working would be an applied research, and then integrative, which would be drawing from past research studies and integrates them. It's holistic. Usually, you'll see that in textbooks and lit reviews. And then ideology, different sides understand the problem differently, publications, speakers, newsletters, and research reports.
All right. Let me interrupt you right there. Which
Okay.
is your dissertation going to be of the three types?
Integrative.
Yours is going to be integrated?
Well, you're using past research or
No,
applied.
no, it's going to be applied.
Okay.
It's going to be applied. Why do we start with a theoretical framework? We start with we test if our data matches that theory. That's exactly what a dissertation is. We start with a problem. We have a lens on the problem. We find a theorist that addresses that problem, and we go out and we collect data and we test it against that theory. It's exactly what a dissertation is. If you saw Carter's final defense today, his chapter 4 and chapter 5, everything he said had to be related back to a theory. Everything. I'll show you that when we get done, by the way. Please continue.
All right. So here's the elements of skillful issue definition. So claims is the assertion from a broader interpretation of the problem. Evidence supports the claims made about the problem. Solution has to be politically feasible and financially affordable. Discourse linking issues to deeply held values, hopes, fears, and aspirations, and a broad appeal of a wide audience. And then an issue is just an issue if it doesn't reach the policy agenda. So everyone can think of issues all day long, but if it doesn't reach the policy agenda, it dies before it even gets there. So there's different types of policy agendas. The systemic agenda, which is broad, all issues people outside of government are discussing. And then it's got education's systemic agenda, which is professional agenda, media and public, and then governmental agenda. And access to getting on these agendas is highly competitive. So here's ways as a school leader to make sure you are staying in loop of the really issues that are being brought to the table. So here's a list of journals or professional education associations that they have. So there's the American School Administrator, School Boards Journal, Educational Leadership, NASSP Bulletin, the Phi Delta Kappan and Principal. And then there's, of course, Education Week. And then on the internet, the U.S. Department of Education. And I did link those. So if anyone wants me to email this to them, I'm more than happy to. But I did look at each of them to link and see what they were. And school leaders influencing the early stages. So issue definition is the most difficult to influence because it's closed to the general public. So just like we've talked a lot about the commissioners, that local government, that's kind of where it begins. Challenge locally. Local business leader connections is key. So especially if you don't live in the community. I don't live in the community that I work in by choice, but you really need to be intentional to make those connections with local business leaders in the community your school is in, because that will drive a lot. And then the agenda setting influences is easier to influence. Knowledge, allies, and building organizational effectiveness. Be prepared to act fast. So it doesn't wait for you to dilly-dally, but you need to be able to act really fast. You can attract attention to that issue. That can help through social media channels, obviously, and also reducing attention to an issue. So one way that it talked about make an easy way to reduce attention to an issue is find out how much it's going to cost. So those were some of the key points in that chapter. And then the next chapter I had was getting the words and the money policy formulation and policy adoption. So that's the next stages. So these are the third and fourth stages. These are more visible. So there are three arenas: legislatures, administrative agencies, and the courts. And I'm not going to play Schoolhouse Rock, but as I was reading this chapter, that's what kept coming to my mind of like how a bill becomes a law.
Yeah.
Because it really went through that process.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking of with that. So the issue definition and agenda setting become legislative proposals, and these are serious recommendations for policy change. It's the first step in policy formation, and it's usually in written form. And then there's common sources of proposals of who brings those up. So interest groups, teachers unions could bring those up, administrative agencies, and of course, chief executives. And then the second stage of policy formation is when the bill turns into a proposed law.
All right. And once it becomes law in North Carolina, whose responsibility is it to interpret that and publish the manual in terms of how folks in the school systems are supposed to then act?
DPI.
DPI. That is their role.
So politics of getting a policy adopted, it involves negotiation and policy actors, sponsorship, ideally members of the majority party and of the standing committee the bill will most likely be assigned to, the reference committee or leader of the House, standing committee, rules committee, and conference committee. And laws can be passed, but can be failed to be funded. So again, like I said earlier, a way to kind of decrease attention to an issue is to talk about the money and how much it's going to cost for what someone's proposing. Federal budget and budgeting at the state level. And then rulemaking, filling in the gaps in the law, defining key terms in a law, defining own internal procedures, and how rules are written is gathering information, providing for public participation, and submitting proposed rules to a designee. So for influencing policy formulation and adoption, know the process, follow the government activity, work with others, and set the priorities. And that's as a school leader. And government relations. So if you want to be part of influencing and really those steps, again, government relations, subscribe to other governments, newsletters, and communications. And also it talked about inviting these government officials that are in your community to events that are appropriate for your school to come so that they can feel part of that community. Working through professional organizations. So memberships are essential. And on page 162 in the text, it talks about, it's got a list of different specialized administrative groups that you can join, subject matter groups, and general associations. But it does recommend to be part of those. And then, of course, lobbying, written communication, phone calls, personal visits, or special comments on influencing the judiciary. And then I wanted to highlight the danger zone. So as a school leader, we obviously all have our own political affiliation, but when you are wearing the hat of school leader, you must be nonpartisan. Campaign contributions, never use school funds for political processes, which also includes small gifts. Like if you would bring a politician out to lunch and you're paying for it, that can be considered a gift. Giving them a shirt from your school, that can be considered a gift. So it did point out the danger areas, especially for school leadership. And then I just put a reference to the text on there as well.
Okay. All right. Got 2 points on that one. Let me share my screen. This is the most well-respected and creditable think tank in North Carolina, the North Carolina Public School Forum. It is supposed to be nonpartisan. It's not funded by special interest groups. Their stuff, I say their stuff, their information is supposed to be not politically biased or paid for, like some of the forums and political action groups. These people are on the up and up. And this is the most widely respected group in North Carolina in terms of a think tank. A lot of the other ones are funded by certain interest groups, and it's amazing. It's almost, it's not coincidental that what they find and what they promote fits the agenda of the people that are sponsoring them. This is not the case with the Public School Forum. This is the most respected and influential group in the state. All right. So it's always good to know who those folks are. The other is, let me see if I've got it right here. Back to your dissertation. This was the one that finished today. All right. You present your findings by research question. The themes are the data in qualitative research, but look, all of it has to go back to your theory. That's why you define your dissertation. You either have a theorist or two theorists in a conceptual framework. Everything you find, you have to test it against theory to make sure it's reliable. So here was the first theme, participant voice. Participant voice is not data. It just shows that that theme really exists. And then here is the theoretical link. You do that with all of your themes, all of your findings. You triangulate it. Your findings for all your research questions have to triangulate it back against the literature, against the theorist. Same way, all the way through. And then when you get to the summary, you can see Aston and Bandura. That's his two theorists. That's his conceptual framework. Everything that you find must be compared against the theory in action research, applied research. That's the way it works. That's what a dissertation is. You collect data and then you test your data against the known theories. And when you do your implications and recommendations for practice, again, it's got to go back. Aston's student engagement, Bandura's self-efficacy. You have to, each one of your recommendations has to be based on, here's his pillars, has to be based on one of your theorists or both of your theorists. So in applied or action research, which is what a dissertation is, you collect data to find out if a program's working, to find out if the lens that you're looking at might help solve the problem that you're trying to deal with. But everything that you do has to relate back to your theorist and the literature. You do a comparison of the theories. What you found, does that match the theorists? That's the way a dissertation works, especially on the qualitative side. All right. Excellent job, Jessica. Questions that you have on any of the things that we've covered tonight?
Dr. Lamb,
Yes.
I do have a question because I'm so confused right now because I'm looking at the assignments for the presentations, and
Mhm.
I only see that we're assigned like one chapter because it's got 'cause one student has one chapter, then another school have another. Is there something I'm missing? As in, like I know that she just did a Fowler one. Is there a assignment
All right.
missing?
All right. There's your policy, face-to-face weekly. You're talking about on the weekly?
Yes.
All right. So right here,
Yeah, James, I had overlooked my second chapter. I didn't even realize. I just thought it was just one.
Yeah.
right here under weekly class presentations,
But it is two.
see right here, 11 and 12. You'll have that one on April 16th. It's right here again, right here on the content page. It's right here.
Okay. Well,
Weekly presentation schedule, and I've got it where you can download it as well. I've got it printed out there, but it will also download, or I think it will.
because it seemed like I seen that one, but then there's another one up there that's like confusing me that looked like it was just one chapter.
No, right here, you've got, oh, this one right here, you've got 11 and 12. You got 11 on this page and 12 on that page.
Yeah. That one I'm
But
not finding anymore. Because I found that at the beginning, but now because what I was looking at where it said I don't know now. The weekly, yeah.
right here, Zoom class 7 on April 16th, Essex chapters 11, and then on the next page is 12 right here.
Okay, I got it now.
Yep, right here. So if you want to print that out, so I've got it in there like this. I've also got it. Uh-oh. Looks like Blackboard just crashed again.
Oh,
Dang.
so
Let me see if it'll come back.
that one makes sense, but there's one sticking in another
There might be. You know me, it could be.
So, but
Let's look at this one right here. No, it's the same on that one. Let me download this one and see what it looks like.
yeah, that one's good too.
Yep. But it's just on the second line. No, they all say there might be something somewhere else, but right here they are. I've got
Okay,
them.
well,
I've got
going
them
with that.
defined for you. So you've got 11 and 12 on April 16th.
Got you.
You got it. There we go. All right. Any other questions? That's a good question. All right. And again, I don't know what's going on with Blackboard today. Well, you saw it it left me again right there. It wouldn't let us in until right before class time tonight. But I don't know what's wrong with it. They sent us a message they were working on it, but hopefully it doesn't get scrambled. All right. So when do we meet again? Somebody tell me.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Same time, same location. And I will go over the stars of the week at that time. Be working on your policy analysis paper. Now, I met with Sean last night. She couldn't come tonight. She was in the other class, so we did class with her last night from 6 to 6:30. And one of the things that I told her on your paper, the first two parts are where you spend the majority of your time, about 15 pages, something like that. The last two parts go really fast. They shouldn't be but like 5 pages for both of them. So understand when you get through part A and part B, then after that it goes real quick. Don't write a 40-page paper. 20 pages is your limit. 15, something like 10 to 15 in the first two. The last two shouldn't be more than about 5. If you got 17 pages, I'll be happy. Don't spend a lot of time on the writing. It's the doing that's important. We started out with James tonight, said that, the important part of this is it's real life and you're doing these things out in the real world. Writing it down is just so that you can document you did it. But the important part is the learning piece that you're getting out in the real world from this. We're not doing theoretical work here. We're trying to prepare you for the real world where you can go out and be successful in it. That's the whole notion here. And so take it as it's intended. Take the learning from doing the policy analysis paper. Jessica, great job tonight. Alicia did a good job with hers too. Great job, both of you. Thank you for your input tonight. Again, the EC stuff is the hardest, and the MTSS into EC, that's where you're going to get the most pushback legally. Parents, all of those kinds of things. Teachers don't like it, don't want to have to do it. They don't see it as part of the job. That's going to be the part that you need to know the best. That's why I went over some of those real life scenarios. I get them every week. I get calls, texts, emails every week. This is going on in my school. Give me some guidance. I do it. I do it every week, and 90% of it is EC stuff on the law end, and that's going to be your everyday job. So just understand that this is the job. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the group? All right. You've done well again. I appreciate you. I will see you next week, Thursday at 7 o'clock. Hopefully, Blackboard will be working better, and we can be or I can be a little better prepared next week. All right. I'll see you then. Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.